Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, my guest is a Twitter personality known as StakesIsHi. He's an American guy who's been living on and off in Brazil and Latin America since 2014, has a lot of experience down in South America. And Stakes, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just to get started, you want to tell us a little bit about who is StakesIsHi?
I'm a systems developer. I work in private equity, and I've been living mainly in Brazil since 2014 with some stints in Mexico, Colombia, and I've traveled a bunch of other countries.
And for continuity's sake, you're definitely friends with a lot of the guys, both online and in person. You've connected with most of the other the guys in the space and many of our previous podcast guests. Who would you say you're maybe the most closest to, or people that you speak to frequently?
Well, unfortunately, some of my favorite podcast guests you've had on your show, I have not had the chance to meet, but we communicate regularly. That would be Jake, Nomad, Steven Story, Eddie Kwan. I've met Lawrence and Dylan, and those are the ones I can recall from your podcast. Uh, do like to link up from time to time with other guys from Twitter, and met a whole bunch in Brazil. Actually, probably about I've traveled with and spent substantial time with probably like 5 or 6 guys from Money Twitter in the past year or so. That would be um, Gucci Bucket Hat, Lobo, Log Fits, Zybok, and I don't know. Hopefully, I'm not missing anyone.
That's pretty epic. What's it like hanging out with Gucci Bucket Hat?
Gucci Bucket Hat. Oh man, he's by far my favorite personality on Twitter, and he's the exact same in real life. He's uh, he's the funnest guy to hang around with.
I want to ask you about it, but I know we would have to cut it, so we'll just we'll just leave it at that. But one of the topics we thought we would discuss today was traveling with friends versus traveling alone. And I think that this is a topic that hits home both for beginner digital nomads as well as people who have been doing it for several years now. And was interested to get your take on how you think about solo travel versus group travel.
Nowadays, I primarily want to do group travel, and not group travel. Oh, let's get on a bus. Let's do this. Let's have the same itinerary. Let's fly in. Let's do everything together. What I mean by group travel is basically being based up in the same city and seeing each other, for dinner, for drinks, doing things in the day, but largely remaining on your own, but just having some guys around. Why I like that is because um, lately I've found guys that have not 100%, but as close to the same belief and value system that I can have. And when you go out, when you go for drinks, when you go to dinner, when you party, you just vibe with these guys on a whole different level than just some random guys that you meet while you're traveling, and you hang out because you're just coincidence friends. You're in the same place, you speak the same language, you have a bunch of free time. The benefits of hanging out with people that are just like you is so much greater than just like some random friends. When I first started traveling, uh, I went abroad in 2012. I went to Madrid. I went straight up solo. And for 2 years, I was just traveling around solo, and I was doing the backpacker thing. I was making friends and hanging out with other expats, foreigners, travelers, young. And it was fun. It was novel. It was something completely new to me. But as time went on, I realized that those relationships were very weak, didn't have much value. They didn't benefit my life beyond just having someone to go out with, so you're not alone, right? Um, and so over the years, in the past 2 years, really since I've been on Twitter, I've met and linked up with people that uh, have my same values, my same beliefs, and they want to do the same things, right? And so when you go out with those kind of people, just the events that you go to, the time you spend is so much higher quality.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And it sort of flows into my next question about finding a tribe, finding a group of like minded individuals, people that you connect with. What are your thoughts on finding a tribe or building your own tribe, being the leader, or ways that people can find other people of like minded beliefs?
When I So in Brazil, I lived there for since 2014 on and off. Only until about the past 2 years have I really found people that I would consider to be my tribe. I find people at the gym, at jujitsu, through friends, at networking events, and my tribe was definitely lacking. When you look at who you can find online, whether it be forums or Twitter or Instagram or wherever, you can really suss out people and know what they believe in on a whole range of topics just by what they post or communicating with them. And so having a tribe is the most valuable thing as a man. You're right. You want guys who share your same values and your same mindset, want to do the same things, can help to protect you. If we go down a primitive mindset, that's really all that it is, right?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely agree. And so, how has I think maybe a lot of the reason you've built out your Twitter is to connect with like-minded people because you're not really overly monetizing your Twitter, even though you have like 5,000 followers. And I see that you do put a fair amount of effort into both your Twitter and Instagram. So I imagine at least some aspect of that is finding the tribe.
Yeah, well, I was on Twitter with 100 followers right at the start of the pandemic, and I met up with Zybok and Logfits, and me and Zybok had less than 100, and Logfits obviously was at like 15K, and when in retrospect, now that I look back, a bigger popular guy to meet up with two relatively unknowns is, now when someone wants to meet up with me, I definitely judge them on the size of their Twitter account, or at least suss out what they have to say, right? But I've definitely, and the whole objective of my Twitter is to have a network, because now that I'm traveling outside of Brazil and to new places, I want to land, have my feet on the ground, and have intel. I want to know people that are there. I want to know the places to stay, and not from just whomever. I want to hear it from people that I personally believe I would get along with, that I would want to hang out with, because they'll know the insights of to where I would most benefit from staying or doing or hanging out. And so, I used to travel alone, and I would go to a new city and just start from scratch every single time. And that's painful. It takes a long time, and there's no acceleration curve. It's very, very slow. But if you can land somewhere and you have some guy that you do or don't know through mutuals off Twitter, your acceleration curve, it just went through the roof, right? They know the bars, they know some friends, they know some girls, they know where to hang out, what to do. They can give you insight on, don't go to this street past this time, or go get your money exchange on this street. And that provides huge value. So as people on Twitter are more and more venturing, it seems like now people are more uh, open to going abroad and living abroad. Maybe I've uh,
Hmm.
just doubled down into a certain section of Twitter, but people are traveling abroad, and it's I can see. Sometimes I see someone is in a city I haven't been to, or a city that I know and like, and I'll consider. I don't even know this person, but I'm like, hey, if I went to this city, I could meet up with this guy, and we could hang out, and it would be fun to see that city again. But yeah, that's definitely the whole point of my Twitter these days. I've never monetized my Twitter. I don't think I ever will. I largely do. I work offline, right? My job isn't some agency or coaching or whatever
Right.
popular things are these days. So I wouldn't be able to monetize my actual uh, job and skill set online unless I went into a whole different niche. but the things that are available to me to make money off Twitter or to put out a course or whatever is pretty degenerate, right? I don't want to be known as like a guy that talks to girls, or how to travel abroad your first time. I don't know that I want to make those courses and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, there's a whole world out there of private equity and other industries. Um, so I imagine you've seen a lot of change in the type of person that travels from 2014 to now, and certainly pre-pandemic to now, with the explosion of remote work and just the increasing acceptance of being able to work online. What have been some of your takeaways in terms of how things have changed over the years?
When I was first in Europe, the only foreigners I knew were basically hippie backpacker types and people who taught English in Spain and ended up staying for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. So it wasn't there wasn't a lot of remote work, and I'm talking 10 years ago, right? There wasn't people who uh, there was no remote work. You were basically teaching English or you were just a backpacker. And so now uh, people can, I know a guy who does AutoCAD for his home city, and he spoofs his VPN and lives in Mexico, right? So that's that's what it comprises today. We have Airbnb, we have all the luxuries. So there's people who just want to geo arbitrage their income or have something different and novel, who are going abroad.
Yeah, it certainly changed over the years. And if you were doing this in 2017, 2018, you're definitely a different type of person. You're definitely an interesting person. And I always knew that, if I saw a guy kind of who was clearly a foreigner working on his laptop in a cafe in the middle of the day in, Buenos Aires or Sao Paulo or something like that, you could always approach that person and they would have a very interesting story about their life, basically. And it was an interesting way to meet people. And, people are always doing something different.
Yeah, I remember back in 2015, 2017, as you say, anyone that I met abroad, I was in Brazil at that time. So anyone that I met in Brazil at that time was basically just a traveler, right? They were just spending a few months, or they were doing some kind of um, remote internet based job, and very simple, just copywriting. They were kind of like an assistant VA. And, there's not that many people that have those roles that could be abroad. um, During the pandemic and even slightly before it, we had this whole it paralleled with WeWork, right? When WeWork became a thing, there was a huge influx of people who were working remotely. So why would you be in Tulsa? Why would you be in Scottsdale if you're tired of it and you kind of want to have some experience? You can just pop on down to Mexico City, Sao Paulo, wherever. So the the people that are going abroad aren't just those dingy backpackers or people who are doing some virtual assistant type work. Now you have all types of people who are doing all kinds of different work, finding themselves abroad.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking next we could talk a little bit about Brazil and make this a nice segment about Brazil and what you like about it, because it's certainly a very underrated place among digital nomads and people working remote, even today in 2022. It seems to be just very undervisited. And I think, we could do a little bit of a service here today to just talk about the benefits of Brazil and the things we like about it.
Yeah, let me just go into why people don't go to Brazil, first of all. Uh,
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so Brazil is personally it's my favorite place. I've spent the most time there. I don't know if it's a confirmation bias, right? Um, but people don't go to Brazil because they speak Portuguese and it's far away. People speak Spanish. usually at high school you'll think that you speak Spanish, or you'll think it's easier to learn, and Portuguese really is a step up. It's the next level from Spanish. So people don't go, it's far, and people think it's dangerous, right? Um, when I was living in Brazil, I offered to bring my nephews to Brazil. They're like 15, uh, 13 and 15 at the time. And I said, yeah, send your kids down and they can stay with me for a month, all expenses. And their parents were like, there's no way we're sending them down there. It's so dangerous. While I live in a city that's so safe, girls are walking their dog in yoga pants at 10 o'clock at night, right? There's no issue. So people don't go there. It really is a huge country, and there's so much uncharted, unexplored land by foreigners. Um,
I
so
think part of the perception as well came from the World Cup, and I think maybe people saw those videos of the kids like stealing pocketbooks and stuff at the World Cup, and a mix of that and just sort of like the imagery of favelas in Rio. That there's still this sort of like lingering impression of danger in Brazil that's somewhat warranted, but is certainly no worse than anywhere else in Latin America.
yeah, and that happens everywhere. I mean, that happens in Brazil for sure. If anyone, if I talk to a guy who's been in Rio for over a year or two, either he's been robbed or his close friends have been robbed, and there's like some scary stories, right? That goes without saying. You got to be open for that, or just find yourself a smaller place that doesn't have those dangers.
Definitely. And there's certainly ways to do that. How would you, I guess maybe if you could give a little bit of a breakdown of Brazil in terms of maybe the regional differences, because it's definitely a gigantic country, as you said, and has huge cultural, regional differences depending on, north, south, etc.
Yeah, so I want to travel to places where they have a similar culture, where people look the same as me, and where the infrastructure is the best, right? Um, for me, I found that to be, and that's why I don't travel to Asia. I like Europe. I like certain places in Latin America. Um, South Brazil, there's about three states, Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, and Paraná, that I found to really fit what I'm looking for and what I value in a society, in a culture. And so in the north, it's a little bit different. You have different kinds of people. The infrastructure is not as good. It's a little bit more dangerous. But that's not to say that there's not places in the north that are worth visiting. So I found a home in South Brazil, and the culture is very similar to mine. It's a high trust society. The people look like me, and that's it's. There's not as big cities in South Brazil that are known for the partying and high density and dating and gastronomy and these things, but for the life I'm looking for, as terms of um, kind of hanging out and having beautiful cityscapes, beautiful nature, beautiful girls, and guys that are ambitious. I found that to be in the South.
hmm hmm So, do you think that for ambitious people in Brazil, do they have other options than going to Sao Paulo?
Oh, absolutely. Um, Sao Paulo is like New York, right? So you can follow your traditional path and go work. You go to school, you go work in a bank, or you work for whatever corporation in Sao Paulo. It's all there. In the South, so in Florianopolis, it's known. It's like a Silicon Valley of Brazil, right? So you have all these tech startups, you have all this technology going on there. Um, I know tons of people in Floripa that are young guys, 21, 22. They're remote workers, right? So they work in Floripa. They go to the office a day or two a week, if at all, and they make substantial income for Brazil, where they can go and travel and live abroad, right? So there
hmm
really is a lot of opportunity there in the South. And why it comes from that, or the reason for that, is there's just such a huge European influence. So it's basically like 80% German and Italian ancestry in at least in Santa Catarina. So you have people that are newer immigrants, and they've just followed the traditional immigrant path to prosperity.
Yeah. Yeah, we have an episode coming out soon with Francisco Litve, who's been teaching flag theory for the Brazilian Portuguese speaking market. And his grandfather is Austrian. So he lived in Austria for like 4 years, speaks fluent German, speaks fluent English, but was born and raised in Brazil. So just a little anecdote there, and shout out to Francisco.
There's cities in the south of Brazil that are literally named after where the founders came from in Europe. There's Novo Hamburgo. Um, there's a city in Sao Paulo that's called Americana. Americana is um, Southerners from the U.S. who went to Brazil who could continue slavery in a different country. So they went to Brazil and founded a city called Americana. There's a city, Prudentiapolis, which is like 80,000. And I think that they teach Ukrainian in the public schools. Something like 60 or 70% of the people speak Ukrainian as their first language.
Hmm.
So uh, and of course you have all these cities that are basically, and we can talk about, what are they called, the rat lines from Europe that ended up in South Brazil and Argentina. But you have all these people that are, their last name is Zimmerman and Bunchend, right? So uh, and I'm
Shout out
German as
Giselle.
well. Yeah, I'm German as well, so it feels like home for me.
So you decided to base up in southern Brazil in a village by the sea. Um, One of the topics we wanted to discuss on this podcast was the idea of constantly moving around versus hunkering down. In other words, what is it better to plant roots, or is it better to, be more adventurous and have a little bit more variance, and maybe do like a month per city, that type of thing. So I was wondering, how do you uh, think about that dynamic and those different opportunities of basing up versus traveling?
At this stage in my life, I'm really looking to. I don't like to travel. I really don't like to travel. It's such a burden on training, on diet, on work, on developing relationships. So what I'm looking for now is really high quality cities that I know people that have a high quality of life, are safe, and I can really um, develop roots, because I'm looking towards the future, like a long term place that I can live. And I have a few of those kind of already sussed out. But I think I'm at this place where I want to be. The past 2 years I was in Medellin for 4 months. I was in Guadalajara for 4 months, and I was in Floripa for you know uh, 12 to 14 months. So and of course, I've been to other cities, and I go here. I was in Balneario, Camboriu for another 6 weeks. But when I was younger, I did the whole backpacking thing. I was, the regrettable, let's go to Germany for 4 days. Let's go to the Czech Republic for 3 days. Just boom, boom, boom. You're spending all the time on a train or a bus or whatever, to and from transit. And so those days, that travel experience has led me to where I am now, where I'm not seeking the abundance of flags or new cities and these experiences, because I've already done it. So I think that, as a first time traveler, um, and it's all about what your risk tolerance is, what you enjoy. But the constant traveling and seeing new places, and here and there, and finding new places, um, is much more suited for younger, more new to traveling people.
Hmm. Yeah, certainly the 3-4 day thing. That's a very European thing, and I mean, I guess maybe you could do it in Mexico or something. But what about even just like the 1 month per spot? Is that because you just really like having your gym and your kind of social circle, and you got it pretty dialed in there.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at today. I now I really like routine. I value. I want to be able to get raw milk. I want to know where I can get the highest quality steak. I want to uh, go into a few choice bars, and I want the staff to know who I am. Right. So to find those few choice bars, you have to go to all the bars. You have to go everywhere, and you have to find the ones that you really
Yeah,
like that match
yeah.
your vibe.
It
Right.
takes time to take over a city for sure.
Absolutely, right? And so, because if you don't, then you're just going, you land in a new city and you're going to go and have dinner, you're going to go and have drinks, you're going to do whatever. You're going to go to everywhere, and half of those places are going to be just cruddy and not so enjoyable. So you have to eliminate all the low quality spots to know where you want to go. And so that's why having boots on the ground,
Hmm.
having known people who are there, um, can accelerate your curve. But why I'm looking towards really moving somewhere and being there long term. And not to say I won't still travel and visit friends or go to other places, but like I want the mayor of wherever I live. I want that person to be at my kids' uh, like birthday party. I want to have a say in the urban planning of the city, help develop something, and become um, uh, in, integral in the development of wherever I end up living. So you can't do that if you're just traveling forever. And there's these people, that travel for forever. They're 45 years old and they're still traveling, um, and they don't have roots. And maybe they go home for like once every few years, and that's really not the life that I want to live.
So, yeah, that leads me to a thought. On the Jake Nomad episode, we talked a little bit about what it would be like to sort of crack into the upper class or to the elite in a given Latin American country. Do you have any thoughts on what it would look like to basically crack into the elite of southern Brazil?
Yeah. So it takes time, like straight up. There's no way around it. You can pop into any of these places in Latin America, and it's a high trust society, right? It's similar to ours. So you can't just show up somewhere and just because you're a gringo and you have a cool job, or you're doing remote, they're not going to just have trust in you and let you into their social circles. That's another big thing about going to places is, um, in some places you will not integrate with the local upper class or the people that you want to associate with just from being there so short term, right? Some girls won't even date you. Like in Medellin, I found this to be true. Is I'm not so fond of Medellin because the crowds. If you do start to integrate and you do find some locals to hang out with and this and that, the locals are so inundated with foreigners that they know that you're just going to be there for a short time. You're gonna dip, you're gonna bounce, and whatever relationships you develop, they're gonna just squander and they'll be done, right? So the highest quality girls, the highest quality guys, don't want to hang around you, don't want to be seen with you, because you're just another cheap a commodity that's going to be gone in a few weeks or a month. So uh, what I saw is that the guys that were there the longest, I met a few guys who've been in Medellin for 8-10 years. They were the ones who were able to penetrate that upper society
Hmm.
and date the girls that would never be seen with a 2, 3, 4 month gringo. So it takes time, um, and you have to, beyond the most common and simple things like jujitsu or the gym or a health club or the yacht club. um, you have to find a way to get into the same, uh, not charities but events that people in those communities go to, right? And so that it's nothing but time. There's no shortcut around it.
Hmm. Right, right, right. And so in southern Brazil, what would some of those events look like beyond just the churrascaria on Sundays?
So in South Brazil, in one of the cities I lived in, there's three Masonic lodges, and these lodges,
Okay.
yeah, there's three, and they're rival, right? So they're for three different types of people. One is for the businessmen, entrepreneurs. One is for the landowners, and one is for the politicians, right? But I've driven past these. I've seen these events, and they have these huge fields next to them, and they have these like I don't want to say a flea market, but I don't know how else to say it. It's a community event that the Masons put on, and these are the people who run that city. There's no doubt about it, right? You have the doctors, the politicians, the landowners, and everyone, and their families are there, right? So um, I'm not saying I'm trying to ingratiate myself into the Mason community, but if you want to know the movers and shakers and meet their daughters or their sons and get to know them, that's that's one avenue in. There's also um, all these art galleries and high in southern Brazil now. They have these things that used to be popular in the US. They're always like 5-10 years behind, right? So they have these um, high quality uh, gastronomical based like food courts, right? So it'll
Yep.
be like in a renovated warehouse, and it'll be exposed, everything exposed brick. Uh, they'll have like a clear glass floor that exposes some grave or tomb or artifact. And so these places have the best restaurants, the most novel and newest and hip. And if you go to these places, uh, everyone is from the upper class. Like you can't even be here if you're not poor. But you go here and you talk to these people, and you're a foreigner or you don't speak the language. They want nothing to do with you. But these places have
Hmm.
events. They have conferences. They do all this kind of stuff. And so getting into those and um, diminishing your outward appearance as a foreigner is by far the best thing that you can do.
I agree. Maybe we could talk a little bit about Florianopolis versus Camboriu. I think those are kind of the two most popular spots in southern Brazil, arguably, and why someone might base up in one versus the other. My thought on Floripa, and I have not been yet, so I'll have to come visit you in 2023. But my thought is really quite big, and you might need a car to get around. I've also heard that it can be a little bit boring. Whereas on the other side, my impression of Camboriú is that it's a little bit more walkable. Slash, if you just have like a bike or a scooter, it's quite easy to get around. Kind of around the Malecon, and yeah, it seems to be quite poppin' there as well. Perhaps less tech and business, but certainly a lot of energy. um, so yeah, was just wondering how would you sort of give us a breakdown?
Yeah, so Floripa is 100% a village by the sea. There's 42 beaches on the island. There's dozens of hiking trails that even people who live on the island their whole life have never explored because there's just so many of them. Floripa is the first place that I went to and hunkered down in Brazil, and I ended up staying there for a long time. What brought me there was the nature, and at that time, it had a real. When I was first traveling there, it had a huge expat community, right? So I'm talking young people. Tim Ferriss went to Floripa in like early in the mid 2000s, and he popularized the 4-hour work week while he was living in Floripa. So there's people like Tim Ferriss that have been in Floripa for 20 years, right? So it really was the the central place for remote workers or entrepreneurs to go down there. They have huge private equity firms that are developed by Americans based out of Floripa. But yeah, it's sparsely populated. There's 500,000 people on the island, and it's a ginormous island. Absolutely need a car if you want to go to the beach. The bad thing about Floripa is that the girls are hot, the food is good, infrastructure's quality, it's safe, But anywhere that you want to live that is a little bit more densely populated or in like a city center is half an hour from the beach, right? The central city, the downtown,
Mhm.
is it's not near the beach and it's really
Really?
cruddy.
It's on like the Bayside with the bridge.
Yeah, it's on the bayside with the bridge. It's really cruddy. The water there is inhospitable. You'll see like foreigners get in the water, and like the locals just like laugh at them because it's like disgusting water. Um, so the places where you kind of want to go out and have like good dinner and good drinks and is far from the beach. Nothing's walkable, by the way, but I think that that gives it some of a charm, right? Like it's really in the winter months, so in December and January, it goes to about 1 million people. But those are people who are looking for the
The
beach.
Brazilian summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, but those are people who are looking for the beach. They fly in, they get a guest house, they get an Airbnb in a tucked away part of the island with like 5,000 people in that local community, and they're just right on the beach, and the beaches are untouched and beautiful, right? And Floripa is it has like 50% of the population is government workers, so it's very comfortable, income and safe. Whereas Balneario Camboriu is they have the two tallest buildings in Latin America, and they're identical, right? So
Hmm.
that speaks to basically the it's an investment for rich people across Brazil to invest in, right? And it's only been bubbling up for the past like 10 or 15 years. You can look at pictures of it, 40 years ago, and there's like 1 hectare beach house right on the beach, and it's a little cruddy thing. Um, but there is where all the money goes. So if you are a rich guy in Sao Paulo, you're a family in Rio, and you kind of want to have something new and novel, you'll buy an apartment in Balneario, and there, it really is like Rio. There's the best thing about uh, BC is that you have skyscrapers and European style commercial streets that are on top of the main beach. So you can walk on the boardwalk, and then you go one or two streets in, and you're at a food garden.
Hmm.
Also, BC has some of the best parties in Brazil in Praia Brava, and Floripa has good parties too. There's a in Judade, they have probably some of the the most well known um, beach parties in Brazil. And just north of BC, they have Itajaí, which has like perennially some of the top five uh, dance clubs in the world. That would be
Oh,
Guadalupe
really?
and Green Valley. Yeah.
Itajaí. Okay, it's good intel.
So there's a different vibe for both. I lived in Floripa, but every year, every time that I come in and out, or it's time to renew my lease, I'm always just a few clicks away of the mouse of moving to BC. The people that I know that have lived there, they say it gets quite small quite fast in the down season. So in Brazilian winter, it's there's not a lot of people because of all the apartments and rental properties. The people come in during summer, right? And so it's kind of a ghost
Right,
town.
right. It like 5X's or something.
Exactly.
And for anyone listening, when Steak says BC, he's saying Balneario Camboriú.
I'll reframe it in a different way. When I live in Brazil, I'm in Floripa for the most part, and that will change this next year. But when friends come in to visit, whenever I've been in BC several times with guys from Twitter, and we stay in BC opposed to Floripa because everything is much more central. We can get a huge place right on the beach. We can walk from the apartment to the beach in 1 minute, and the amenities that that city provides for a group of guys that want to have fun and party and do fun things is much more convenient. than Floripa.
Definitely makes sense. Um, and about Floripa and sort of the party scene. So the Jurere is the north of the island, and I believe that's one of the main, most upscale sort of party areas. And then there's also one in Lagoa, basically on the east, and really all around. So how sort of dispersed are things in Floripa, and how would you sort of rank them?
Let me tie back in an older topic and reel me back in if I lose my focus
Go
here.
for it.
But so in Judade, in the north of the island, is where you will find um, literally $1.5 million homes. So imagine how expensive those are for Brazilians, right? The people who own these
Hmm.
homes are the wealthiest of the wealthy in Brazil. There's no gates. It's a straight up. It's like something you would see in Pacific Palisades, right? The streets are palm lined. There's no gates. The door is just like straight up on the street. Beautiful homes. They all have a pool. Um, and when you go to Jurerê, the beach or the beach clubs, there's Pedose, there's Milky, there's Cosmo 300. There's so many, and they change all the time because they go out of style. But they're all just right on the beach. And when you go to these things, you're gonna find the upper class of the upper class. You're gonna find girls that have modeling contracts. You're gonna find uh, daughters of top surgeons. You're gonna find politicians' kids, and uh, I've been in Brazil for a long time, and I bring in absolute specimen Chad men, and they, you go and talk to these girls, and they want nothing to do with you. There's no chance that you can even talk to these girls. Now, go to Colombia, go to wherever, and you have free reign to talk to these girls, and they'll be very receptive. In Brazil, these girls aren't impressed by foreigners. They they're raised to a different standard, and so they only want people in their social group that can amplify their life or their social circle, right? So
Hmm.
that's the kind of crowd that you find in Judade. Now, uh, about 30 kilometers south of that, you'll find Lagoa, but it's not 30 kilometers in a straight line because the city is an island. It's based on it has mountainous terrain and all these uh, lagoons, and the roads were not constructed with ease of transport in mind. They were just old dirt roads because that's kind of where they were able to develop in the you know 100 years ago, and
Yeah.
they paved
So
them.
it takes a while. It takes like 45 minutes to get like halfway down the island.
It'll take an hour to get from Jurerê to Lagoa da Conceição. Yeah, 45 minutes, and that's in the non-busy season. If you're there in December and January, that same trip on a Saturday, a sunny Saturday, will take you 3 hours because there's so many people. But Lagoa is that's where I first based up. When I got to Floripa, I bartended at a hostel. I was like 23 and I had nothing of value to deliver, and I didn't have an agency or whatever, so I was bartending at a hostel in Lagoa, and it was picturesque.
Hmm.
I'm on top of a mountain. The bar is overlooking the lagoon, and there's a beach just like a 5 minute walk down the hill. But
Hmm.
what Lagoa offers is it's been like a spiritual hippie community forever, and that's what it is today. You have all kinds of there's like 3 or 4 beaches around, and you can go and kite surf. But Lagoa offers something completely different, right? The people from Jurerê, like that class of people, um, rarely go down to Lagoa, and if they do, it's just for the beach.
Gotcha. And would you say that those are sort of the main two scenes in Floripa?
The main two scenes. No, another scene in Floripa would be downtown, so Centro.
Hmm.
Um, it has everything that you want in a big city. It has good food. It has nice bars. It has some nice places. But the whole south of the island, so it's basically um, there's two kinds of people. You live in the north of the island, and that's where you have like nice condos. Uh, the condos are right on the beachfront. You can kind of walk around. Security is not much of an issue. You don't have gated homes. And the people who live in the south has abundant nature and all of those small communities that are hard to get to, and there's not much to do there. So you have the people who are um, more nature focused and kind of spiritual or want a serene kind of life, and then you have the people who are more ambitious and that who live in the north. So I, I live in the south. I want to go hiking. I don't want to be around. uh, I like to have a bigger house right on the beach, and so you can have that in the south. In the north, if I were to rent a house for myself, it would be at least 4 bedrooms, and it would cost me 3,000 a month. If I rent the same quality of house in the south, I'll have 3 bedrooms, I'll have a pool, but it'll be 1,500 a month, and I'll be walking distance from the beach. And the people
Hmm.
that go to those beaches are much friendlier, right? It's
Down to earth.
absolutely down to earth. The quality of girls is going to be about the same. It's not the upper echelon of Brazil, but you can walk on the beach. Everyone's friendly. You can get some good food. So I like the South personally because I want to go
And
hiking
is
and
this
coast.
I'm looking at it, it says like seems like the biggest sort of congregation is Campeche, Morro das Pedras. Is that the kind of area?
Yeah, so I personally like yeah, Campeche is the best for me, at least recently, because I want to be able to get to the beach as quickly as possible. And living in Campeche, you can be in downtown, so you can go to clubs, you can have food and drinks in downtown within like 20 minutes, and you're practically living on some of the best beaches in Brazil.
Did you buy a car or anything, or you just Uber?
No, so this is one of the best things about Latin America that I found, or more so Brazil, is um, you can just show up and you can rent a car for like 15 bucks a day, right? Try doing that in the US or in Europe. Where are you going to find a car rental where you just have to show your passport and a credit card and they'll give you a car for 15 bucks a day? So I rent a car. I have a guy. If you go to Floripa and you need a car, let me know. I'll send you my contact. But you absolutely need a car. I don't like Ubers. I don't trust people driving me so much, and it is kind of inconvenient. So yeah, definitely need a car down there.
Gotcha. So do you do like a monthly rental or just sort of occasional when a big weekend's coming up or something?
Yeah, I just rent a car all the time because there, you know, in Campeche or really anywhere in Floripa, you're not going to be within walking distance of a grocery store or all the places you want to go to. So always have a car.
Nice, makes sense. Do me a favor and get slightly closer to the mic. It was a bit better before.
Cool. Here we go.
Yeah, love it. No, this is actually a great breakdown of Floripa and southern Brazil, and I think a lot of people will get a lot of value out of this being kind of one of the main hotspots down there. Um, I almost want to double down asking about the elite stuff because I think it's very interesting and it's very insider knowledge that most people don't have. Um, but like, how would you describe the elite in Brazil or in southern Brazil specifically? Is it like industrialists or landowners, or is it people that went to a specific high-end school in Sao Paulo? I guess it's a little bit of everything, politicians as well, but could you like describe a bit sort of what the makeup of that looks like?
Yeah, so from what I found, and this topic fascinates me. Everywhere I go, whether it be in the U.S. or in Latin America, I'm always analyzing the social classes and the structure of the society. Right. So, um, from what I can tell, from my perspective as an amateur uh, uh, analyst of
Observant.
social classes, yeah, um,
Yeah.
what it usually is and like I said, right? So South Brazil is 80% Italian and German ancestry, right? So you have people who left Europe because they were ambitious and they saw opportunity in basically uncharted land. They had a skill, and whatever that skill was, whether it's ironworking, farming, tailoring, whatever, they went to Brazil because there was abundant land and it was up for grabs. So they went there, and basically land was cheap, right? So you can ply your craft, you're a tradesman, you can just aggregate some land. And some people make better choices than others, right? Some people bought land, or they, by fortune they find themselves in a city that would become a metropolis. So if you have some land and you ply your craft in a city that becomes something, whether it's a beachfront, and let's be clear, there's endless beaches in Santa Catarina and Paraná that are gorgeous. They're impeccable, like you see in Santa Barbara or San Diego, and it just goes for hundreds of kilometers. It's gorgeous.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, in California, you have really good beaches, but in North California, the beaches are rocky terrain and they're unforgiving. Like they're they're beautiful, but you can't live there. You can't do things on the beaches. It's not flat in this place, right? So let's say that you own a little beach home as a second home. It's your fortune or luck if that beach community develops into Floripa or BC, right? From there,
Hmm.
um, because land was so cheap, people accrued wealth and assets through land holdings, whether that be from farming or industrialists, because in the South it is a lot of industry, whether it's car manufacturing or plastics or agriculture, fertilizer, all this kind of stuff. So you have people with some very basic skill sets that just basically developed the whole economy for Brazil. So things are um, high quality goods are fabricated and manufactured in the South, whether that's for agriculture or cars or whatever, and
Hmm.
technology too. So it's a classic thing of people become rich through land holdings or agriculture. Their kids get good education. Their kids continue into good professions, whether that's medicine or agriculture or manufacturing or whatever, and the cycle just continues forever, right? So the people that are upper class in let's say in Juderia, their family likely owns land and farm or agriculture in the interior. So they have abundant land holdings, and their kids or their parents are professionals, whether that's a CPA, a lawyer, a doctor. And the kids now, for the most part, they go into engineering. So engineering is huge, or they're socialites in the arts. So that's
Hmm.
for the most part, that's a typical story that you hear all the time, and it's definitely true in South Brazil. There's there's girls that I've met who come from the interior where they live on a family estate and they grow soybeans. Right, soybeans are huge, so they come there and they come and
Yep.
spend the weekends in Floripa or BC because they're basically their family is ultra wealthy, but these girls have no skill sets. Their parents were basically saying, "There's no need for you to go to school. You're basically going to marry within our industry and develop our wealth. We'll keep it, between the family kind of thing." And so they travel between Floripa and the interior where they live, and so uh, the highest quality, the most attractive, the most well educated, the most well spoken, interesting, higher social classes almost are always living somewhere in the interior, and they frequent the coast for quick getaways.
Gotcha. So you'd say it's a lot of wealth from the interior that sort of gets spent in Floripa and along the coast.
Absolutely. And so they'll have homes in Floripa or on the coast or visit frequently, but they stick with their family. They live interior. They have beautiful homes um, and their churches in the interior. So, I like Floripa and BC, but I think I've been looking at about 3 or 4 cities in the interior that are relatively small, but the highest quality girls and the smartest guys that I've met come from these cities, and they live there. They stay there, right? So it's like a 5 hour drive, 6 hour drive into the darkness of the interior of Brazil, and that's where they live.
That's awesome. Do you really think you could do that? Give up the beach and go live in the interior?
I don't like the beach, man.
What?
I don't like the beach. This is coming from a guy who's lived on the beach for many, many years. Uh, the culture that the beach um, develops is one that I don't really appreciate at this time. It's very relaxed. It's very chill, laissez faire. Whatever laissez faire is not the right word, but it's like a free for all, right? People want to smoke weed. They want to hang out. The last thing I want to do is spend my whole Saturday afternoon getting drunk and hanging out on the beach in the sun. That's literally everyone's fantasy in Floripa. That's what they love to do. That's their pastime. And for me, that doesn't cut it. I want to be in, out an hour, have some fun, meet some people, get in and out. And so to develop my whole life around a beach community seems counterintuitive to what I'm saying now. But the life that I developed in Floripa, it keeps attracting me there. I have friends. I know where everything is. It's very comfortable. So uh, give me 2 weeks out of the year on a beach and I'm good. If I don't even have that, I'm not upset.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think in Brazil you might have trouble anywhere, right? I mean, they love their botecos. They love they love a good excuse to drink and hang out.
Yeah, and the interior is more appealing to me, specifically for the reasons that we're talking about this this different class of people, about analyzing um the industrialists, the agriculturalists, the landowners. And in the
Hmm.
interior, you have everyone is conservative, right? They value, they have family values. They worship God. They love their father. Their family is the most important thing to them. They have all the money in the world,
Right.
and they
And
can
you're
go to
saying a lot of that goes out the window on the coast.
yeah. So they go to the coast just because it's the beach and it's nice and it's fun, it's different. But then they go home to where everything is sane and loving. In Floripa, um, they have like a dozen universities. So what it fosters is it fosters uh, purple hair septums. There's basically purple hair septum girls who are English lit majors or sociologists, and then you have
Right. So you're saying
uh,
Floripa is a little too hippie, basically.
yes, yeah,
Makes sense.
the people who are from there
So
and who it
So let's just
draws.
say, and I could sort of guess some of these interior cities that might be on your list, but let's just say it's, I don't know, Curitiba's the biggest one, but maybe it's Blumenau or Maringá or Londrina or Campo Grande or maybe some of the more Italian ones in Santa Catarina. I mean, what would that kind of look like though? You know what I mean? Other than just working a lot, I feel like there's almost less to do if other than drinking in some of these places.
Yeah, so my ideal setup, and I'm actually this year I'm going to be developing this in Mexico. I'm moving my family to Mexico, but in Brazil, if I were to do this alone, maybe the year after, what I would be seeking to do is have a house in Floripa or in BC to be based out of, and I'll spend the most of the time there, but I would be going into the interior. So Maringá, Londrina, Blumenau, and then in Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Maria, Novo Hamburgo, these and Caxias do Sul. These are the cities
Hmm.
that have much different type of life than you have on the coast, and I really just want to explore these. And and here I would spend about a month each. I'll hunker down, also because I'm working a lot these days, so I don't have the time to enjoy the beach and do this thing all the time. So um, some solitude would be really good for me. You know. And so basically,
Okay.
what I envision is let's call it import export to right. So if
I know where you're going with this.
yep. So yeah, so have a nice home. And a lot of my friends are seeking to move to Brazil, right? So we can have a nice big home on the coast and have our life based out of there, and just go into the darkness and come back home often.
Yeah. Man, I can't wait to see 40-year-old Stakes, and he's got 1,000 acres of soybeans, and maybe not soy, but something, right?
Hey man, I'll grow soy. I won't eat soy, but I'll grow it and send it to China. I have no problem with that.
Oh man, do you
But
like sertanejo music and all the like sort of interior Brazil country stuff?
I don't, but I like the culture that it fosters. Right. So I've taken all the dance classes. I know forró and sertanejo and all that stuff. Um, and I don't like it, but to be honest, I don't like really any Latin American music except for bossa nova. So
Hmm.
you just got to kind of live with it wherever you go.
That's pretty cool. You've done Fajol lessons?
Yeah, forró, sertanejo. It's you go to a dance school and you do salão, which is just like salon, and so you take
Yeah.
they go through all of it. Zouk's fun, samba, salsa, all of it.
Have you ever been to Fortaleza?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on Fortaleza?
Um, I couldn't really give you one. I only spent like 3 days there. It was during the World Cup. Um, I don't particularly care for the north. I like Salvador a lot actually. Um, but just people want to party. The beach is great. You have some nice homes there. That's all I can really say.
Fair enough. Have you ever given consideration to Minas Gerais or like Espiritu Santo along the coast there? Like could Belo Horizonte ever be a fit for you, or is it just maybe a little bit too big of a city? Or
No, so I think that I don't want to clown on big cities because I think that they have huge values, especially as a younger person. So there's there's a duality of man, right? Like you want to be in a dense city and ambitious and money hungry and climbing the ladder, but you also want to be like left alone in solitude, right? So that's me, and I go back and forth through this all the time. BH Belo Horizonte is from everything that I've been told by foreigners, by locals who go to BH, they love it. It's a great place. It's a beautiful city, huge. It's in the interior. Gets super hot. A city like that, um, Espiritu Santo, like those places, could be really cool. I've just never, I've flirted with the idea, but I just never pull the trigger. My issue is that I tend to dig in and I want to stick that route because I've developed a thing there and I start to idealize it, right? So Floripa may be the worst place in the world for me, but I've just been there so long that I want to stake there or around there.
yeah, I mean it's not a bad place to be set up. I must say it's definitely quite beautiful. Um, hmm. Definitely a couple different directions I could go in this now, but I know you wanted to talk a bit about hotels versus Airbnb or kind of how to find a place. Um, would you like to give some tips to digital nomads and to our audience that are basically trying to figure out the best way to travel? Should they book something for just a couple of days and then find something on the ground, or how does it sort of work in Brazil? And have you noticed anything different about the accommodation hunt in Brazil versus maybe in other parts of Latin America?
Yeah, so from my experience, hotels in Brazil are lacking amenities that you get in the US or in Europe. Um, for a short stay, 1 or 2 days, I always get a hotel. It's very simple and easy. But I like to cook. I want to have a nice kitchen. I want to have a nice lounge area. I want to have a view. I want to be in a place that's an experience. No hotel will ever give you that. Even in Floripa, all the hotels are very bland. You won't find a hotel like right on the beach with a nice patio or things like this. So what I do when I go to Brazil or a new place is I'll get an Airbnb for 2 weeks or whatever just to get my foot on the ground. And then once you're there, you either want to be able to negotiate with your Airbnb host offline and get a longer term rental, or you can find places that are not on short term rental sites that you can get a hell of a deal for. I don't like hotels because I don't want people like I don't want to see people. I don't like people very much. So I don't want to have to come into a lobby and see the same people. I don't want people knocking on my door asking for room service. And you can't cook. You're just going to be eating seed oils all day. So um, if you are in Brazil, Airbnb is by far the best thing, but you can also it's a huge off market economy. So you just get their WhatsApp and talk to them offline. You'll get a great deal.
You know, Stakes, I realized we talked a lot about sort of Floripa and the regions and the differences between BC and Floripa and things like that. But I feel like we should do a bit more of a service of talking about the culture of Brazil to an American that's never been. Maybe just starting with pointing out some of the cultural differences that you've observed and just I don't know, just sort of talking like in a lot of minutia in detail about what Brazilian culture is really like in your experience.
In the South, the culture that I don't like doing things that are very different to the way I grew up. So in the South, people are pretty much the same, right? Or at least the people that I have found myself to associate with. They they want a better life for themselves, right? So they study. People in the South of Brazil study a lot. They go to university. They follow the typical same path that you follow in the U.S. Right? They value education and they go through that. They have the same hobbies. They want to do the same things. They want to travel. Unfortunately, no Brazilians really get to travel. Um, the girls in Brazil are extremely affectionate versus like I guess you can say uh, there's always a debate between Latin American girls and American girls, and Latin American girls will fall in love with you so fast, or at least they proclaim to, right? Um,
Hmm.
what else is there? This is such an open ended topic. If you want to give me a few specifics, I can relay.
Yeah, I mean, what do Brazilians do on weekdays? Do you find that it's like pretty dead in Floripa on weekdays, and they really sort of live for the weekends, or is it kind of going every day of the week there?
You have the same. I feel like this is such a bad answer, but it really is the same as anywhere else, right? So you'll have like these botecos. It'll be like the corner dive bar in whatever city in the U.S. that you live in. The only
Hmm.
difference is it's kind of outdoors, and people are in Havaianas and board shorts, right? So they go to these places and they drink these litrão. It's like a liter bottle of cheap beer. It's corn based, and they drink there and they watch soccer, and it's always on the street. So it'll be like it's pretty dangerous actually. Like all these botecos are on a street corner or a street front, and I can't
Hmm.
I have this there's this called Le Appel du Vide, which is like the darkness of the void of darkness or something. And it's like you just always imagine like the worst situation. So all these bars that are on the street, there's no guardrails, there's no nothing. A driver can just like lose control and just plow through all these people. But this is the most common thing. So you have basically uh, I don't want to say degenerates, but in the US, they would be classified as degenerates. In Brazil, that's just the very typical thing. You go to the corner, you hang out with the local community guys, and you drink all day, all night. And you can be, Lawrence talks about this a lot, is that the happiest people he knows are guys that don't have a job. but they eat fresh fish and hang out on the beach all day. You have these people 100% all in Floripa, all in South Brazil, where they're not planning, and this is likely because they have it's a socialist economy, right? So these people don't really need to plan so much for the future. They just live in the moment. And guys who have no monetary assets or value or things that you would typically ascribe to being being able to provide for a woman will have a beautiful woman or several, right? And so there's a high culture of going out, dancing all the time. People are going to the clubs the whole week, right? And they're going out and eating.
So would you say that the average Brazilian guy is like going out and drinking like multiple days a week and just sort of out there like all the time?
Absolutely. And they play video games. They're into crypto, and I'm talking just like normal Brazilian guys who earn like $1,000, not even $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month in Brazil is like a good income. That's like a college grad, like an entry level engineer. $1,000 a month. But if you're pulling in like 500, 600, you can go and do whatever you want. You have a PS4. You for sure live at home, or you live in a dingy place. But yeah, people go out all the time, and that's kind of why I'm very selective with the people that I hang out with, or that I try to spend time with, because at least from my experience, people just want to have a lot of fun, and it's for a newcomer into Brazil, or um, a traveler, you want to have fun too. So these are the best people that you can hang out with. But long term, it gets tiring and it doesn't provide much value.
I know that in Brazil there's quite a unfortunate culture of just not saving money and just spending everything, and also a big culture of how do you put it, like layaway payments or paying for things in increments instead of outright. And so, for example, if someone buys a phone or a car, they might end up paying some multiple of what it actually costs because they're just used to paying the monthly increments. I wish I knew the word in Portuguese, but yeah, could you speak to this a little bit? Just sort of this sort of like lack of financial education and just sort of like interesting phenomenon that I think is common in a lot of South America, but seems to be especially pronounced in Brazil.
Yeah, so Brazil recently just got like credit cards. So there was no credit system, or it was like widely unavailable until like 10 or 15 years ago. So now people, I don't know that people are in a lot of debt. I wouldn't say. I've never inquired into their financial status, but um, this layaway, and the name escapes me at this time, but I see it every single day uh, at every point of purchase. You're offered to pay it over 10 months. You go to the grocery store and you buy $10 worth of stuff. They ask you if you want to pay all up front, or if you want to put it on payments. So this this feature is available literally everywhere. And
Is it
some
like porção, like per portion or something like that?
yeah,
And
I don't know what it's called, but yeah, exactly.
so it's, but is it through the credit card? Like if you're at the grocery store, is that's not a credit card though? They have like their own schemes.
No, so I don't know about bigger purchases like a car or whatever else. But if you go to the grocery store, basically, and your bill's like 200 reais, they'll say, "Do you want to pay it now, or do you want to pay it over 10 months, or 5 weeks, or whatever?" And so they'll charge you every period the 1/10 of that. And I don't know that they charge interest on that. I think that they just do like a zero financing payment.
And so they just charge your credit card basically like every month, and the cashier just sort of like enters it in the system, and I don't know, they have some sort of back end system that does the charging.
Yep, it's like auto pay, a
It's
recurring
crazy.
auto payment, and they'll offer this for the smallest things. Man, it's like, uh, you know, it's um, it's baffling, really.
And so wouldn't it get to the point where, people who are making whatever 600,000 bucks a month, like a significant percentage of their income is just going into paying their layaway payments?
I imagine so, right? Those, if you're just doing these layaway payments um, on autopilot, everywhere you go, you have an auto pay for all your groceries or your clothes or whatever. I'm sure at some point you can look, a year down the line and say, wow, I have, you know, 50% of my salary is going to these auto payments. So I have no experience with that. I've never selected that option, by the way. I should have, just for a case study.
Just for fun?
But
Yeah, I
so
mean,
in
go ahead.
in Brazil, this they have Nubank, which is like a completely a digital. It's done on your phone, and Nubank is like the most. It's like Sequoia Capital in the U.S. like is a huge investor into it. It's this. It's like the fastest growing bank. So they're ditching
Yep.
the traditional banking system and they're just going digital. And they give you credit cards. They give you all these kind of features and stuff. So it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, so it's interesting in and of itself, but then it also sort of just plays into the sort of living in the moment ness that Brazilians seem to have, right?
Oh, everything's in the moment. It's one of the least forward-looking societies that I've been to, for sure. But that's because also I live on the beach, right? So I think that is a parallel, right? So if you're in Mexico City or Guadalajara versus whatever, Puerto Vallarta, and you find the same class of person, the person who lives on the beach is going to be a lot less worried, right? They're kind of hanging out, and this is the whole thing about all the countries on the equator, right? They're not planning for winter or the long term or whatever, and it's in their DNA. So if you're on the beach, you're not really forward looking, and I can't speak to other places in Brazil, but that's kind of how I imagine it. Also, it's a very very relaxed culture. And so that's why they
Yeah,
like socialism.
yeah, it definitely must be conflicting at an internal level quite a bit, where you're trying to grind, you're trying to get ahead, and be an entrepreneur and work online and have responsibilities, and you're just maybe constantly getting invites on your phone, or you're just you in some way you're kind of just like fighting against the current.
Well, it's not so much the overlap into my life or the opportunities. It's more so the way that the culture and the system operates. So if you go to places and everyone is super laid back, things just don't work orderly, right? High corruption, which is actually a great thing because you can accelerate, uh, whatever bureaucracy you have to go through. You can just pay a higher premium and it gets done faster, or things get done in your favor, which is great. That's one of the things I like about Latin America. Um, but when things just don't work right, when the infrastructure, when businesses, when service, when payments and things don't work right, that's very frustrating to me. I do like the easygoing attitude that the beach affords, but similarly, the time that things take and the inefficiency and the amount of errors that happen is goes along with that laid back attitude, but that to me is unacceptable, right? So you can either live on the beach in Brazil where everyone's like, whatever, it's happening. That's how it always happens. It's wildly inefficient and we lose money and it's inconvenient, but who cares? That's just the way it is. Or you can live in Switzerland where it's cold and everything runs exactly perfect, optimized, efficient. And that's like they're polar opposites, right? But I want to have both.
Hmm.
And it's hard to find that.
Yeah, I think that's the eternal struggle of the digital nomad, right? Just sort of the paradox or the balance between being around high Q, well functioning places, and being quote unquote off the grid or in a beach town and close to nature and not really around too many people. I think a lot of people hit that, especially I think probably especially after they've been doing it for a couple of years and maybe they're getting into their 30s and they need to start thinking about settling down. Like when you're in your 20s, you can do things a little bit different, but I think as you get older, you gotta start playing a different game.
Yeah, and when when it's hard to find people that are ambitious and want the same things as me, I find that tribe online, right? But it's much different to have it in a group chat and sit on your phone and talk with people that have these same goals. But it's also another thing to go and be with these people in real life and have a drink and hang out with them, right? So that's
For
the
sure.
thing that's been difficult in Brazil, is finding those kind of people. Luckily, a lot of the people that I've made friends with in the past 2 years uh, love Brazil and they go there a lot. So and some of them are buying properties in Brazil. So it's great. It it it's a confirmation of a longer presence I might have in Brazil.
Yeah, there's definitely value to being based somewhere that people pass through a lot. I've noticed that here in Lisbon, there's just always people passing through in Lisbon, and you can go out and do some networking and stuff. I think Florianopolis, that definitely happens as well. People kind of passing through. Maybe a bit more so if you're in Rio, but still quite a bit in Floripa. But if you go out to Londrina or something, it's not going to happen, right? That would be a very specific mission. Um, so that's one thing I think about is potentially basing up in sort of a hub where people are apt to visit.
Yeah, the going back to the duality of man, which is living in a city and living in a village in solitude. Uh, Cities are bad for your health, right? Talk about the air quality, the water pollution, and everything like that. Being based up in a city like that is exactly perfect for what you're describing. But you have to be able to get out or have a varied lifestyle, right? You can't be in that city forever. It's the rat race. And for young men, that's the best thing. You want to get in there early. You want to get what you want to get done, and then you want to retreat to a village by the sea. I think that's as I get older, that's how I view it. And city slickers or the village by the sea goers may see it differently. But I think that there's huge benefits in both, whether it's for networking in big cities, finding a mate, or living in solitude and crushing it on your own.
And when you talk to the local Brazilians, do you think that there's anything that you guys can actually work on together? Um, in terms of like actually kind of making money together or doing something, or how do you sort of bridge that gap?
Um, a lot of the friends that I've made through jujitsu are uh, really disciplined and ambitious guys, and they may lack options, or they may not know the tools. They may not have tools, but they want to develop those tools. So a lot of the people that I've worked with in Brazil I've met through jiu-jitsu, right? I have a friend that I met in jiu-jitsu, and I taught him some things about SEO. He started to make these Facebook groups for lead gen, and now he's a remote worker for an American company doing SEO, and he's making
Hmm.
like 3,000 a month, which is like a doctor's salary almost. So these guys are open to it. Um, I've looked at businesses and developing business in Brazil. I used to do. I had a marketing agency when I first started to really dig into Brazil, maybe 2016, 2017. I was doing SEO in the US, and I said, man, nobody's doing SEO in Brazil. It's horrendous. The Google search results were the worst things ever. And there was such a huge opportunity, right? If I just picked the plastic surgeons and the dentists, I could make a killing. But the thing is a plastic surgeon or a dentist in Brazil charges one fifth the price they charge in the US. So I have to charge one fifth the price in the US. So the whole world was open to me. Every opportunity is there, but you're dealing with 20% of the price, 20% of the revenue on my end. So the whole world was open, but it's like, why even bother? I'll just stick it out in the US where competition is fierce. So you can do things in Brazil, and you can be, a big fish in a little pond, but that little pond is really constricting. I wouldn't be able uh, to elevate my lifestyle if I were to do those things in Brazil.
Got it. So potentially a place to recruit human capital.
Yeah, human capital, and when I'm a system developer, I look at things and identify where the systems are wrong or where it can be improved, and it's maybe my skill set in that came from living in Brazil because nothing operates efficiently. So at every point of contact, at every juncture of any process, things are just inefficient, right? So if you can find a way to get in there and do something that you want to do, or help local guys in realizing these things, you can change their life, right? They can take any company and implement some facets that they do in the US, and you have like the dominant leader in that market.
So as we're wrapping up, and Stakes, you've been super generous with your time. I bet a lot of our audience are nomads that have spent significant time in Mexico, in Colombia, and probably basically everywhere except Brazil. Um, and they probably have a good setup in Mexico or whatever. What would you tell them to sort of convince them to give Brazil a shot?
Well, there's a meme these days, and you'll see it on Twitter if you're on there. Everyone is saying that Brazil is super dangerous and shouldn't go there, and stay away because of various XYZ reasons. Um, that is largely a meme. We like to keep Brazil to ourselves. We like to keep our hamlets private because it's so good. Um, but you can overcome those with English and Spanish. You can get around it. It's far away, but just dig in. Whatever brought you to Mexico or Colombia in the first place, you'll find that the grass is much greener in Brazil. Um, and whatever value you get in being a foreigner, whatever value you identify in that local place, I promise you is better in Brazil.
Awesome, man. Well, I can't wait for you to run for governor of Santa Catarina. I will be sure to vote for you. And yeah, man, we'll make sure that we're a well-established part of the Brazilian elite in the near future. Sounds like a plan.
Hell yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you for your time. Is there anything that you'd like to shout out or any parting words?
Nothing from my end. Thanks for having me on.
Sweet and simple. Thanks, Dex. Appreciate it.
Bye.